In this video essay, we're going to be tackling several things at once. If you've been keeping up with Loki, you realize that time travel is a major issue in that story, and that's sometimes brought up with Zack Snyder because The Flash does time travel, and questions arise if this really does damage to the narrative. So we'll listen to Mauler and how he's going to work through this, but not through Snyder, but through Terminator, and we're going to show he, as always, is being very hypocritical and pulling a double standard. But it's going to be a very long excerpt because we're going to listen to him berate the Snyder Cut and then get into Terminator with Critical Drinker. And he's going to make some shocking admissions. We're going to then comment on that as well as comment on his closing, quote, argument against the Snyder Cut and judge that with what he says with Critical Drinker.
Zack's movie thinks it's simultaneously intelligent and mature.
Fuck the world.
And all I can do is laugh. But what? It's worse because there's more cringy jokes? A jelly lip? Because it's color graded like a 90s pop song rather than a teenager's idea of murky nightmare piss? God, it's so washed out it looks like a cancer patient. Maybe you hate it because of the Russian family, but have you ever actually criticized the Russian family scenes beyond saying, oh, it's out of place? Seems to me it's a welcome fucking relief to have people being saved in a Snyder DC movie, and the coverage I've seen of this so far has been incredibly biased, surface level, and desperate to avoid controversy while ushering in what might be the pinnacle of the video essay YouTube genre being no less bloated and bland than the movies they cover.
Over-identify much?
That's the thing, I actually have no problem with the premise of Predator, but I do with Terminator as a premise. But I usually say that I actually like Terminator more than Predator, but that is always up for change. You know how it is. So the idea being that the Terminators at their end were like, we're going to send back a Terminator to essentially defeat the leader of the humans, so he could never rise up and destroy us in the first place. Mm-hmm. If we ignore time travel rules for a second, I'd just be like, why did you send back one? And it's like, we have to assume that that's all they could do. You know, like, Well, of course, that gets thrown out the window with Terminator 2. It's like, add 3, add 4. You know how it goes. It's just like...
Yeah. Dark Fate would have us believe that they've just been sending like a steady stream of them throughout history, you know?
Yeah, and, you know, the best you can sort of do with this, I guess, as a writer, would be like, yeah, the machines had a protocol in mind where they were like, it's way riskier to send someone back in time in terms of what's going to happen to time in general, and that they don't want to use that because not even the machines are 100% certain of what the results will be. However, they will engage with it if they think they're about to lose their empire, if you will. And so they sent one. And then you could probably be like, is it reasonable to infer that they would have sent it when John Connor was, you know, to go after the mother of John Connor? It's like, yeah, I think that's fair enough. It's just that Kyle, the part that gets me is Kyle says they sent that one back, and in a response, they sent Kyle back to deal with him. And then they blew up the whole place. And I was like, why did you only send Kyle?
Yeah, you could have sent an entire battalion of men back.
I feel like if we're saving the world, like literally humanity's existence, I feel like it's probably worthwhile to actually send a lot of people.
Yeah. It's a tough one. I don't know if there's like resource constraints to this kind of thing. Like perhaps, you know, you use this time travel equipment and then it takes like, you know, 15 hours for it to recharge so that you could do another one. And perhaps the complex was in danger of falling into you know, the AI's hands again. So they had to blow up without, you know, risking it. I think you could probably construct any number of explanations why. I just, you know, like you say, there is a bit of a gap there, and like, why didn't you send more people? But
yeah, you can try and infer, and I would even say I try to account in my own way. I guess I'd be like, maybe Reese says that the station was set to self-destruct. We had no time left. We could send someone through, and I volunteered. You know, it was a desperate move, and he said he would do it for that reason or whatever. And so we could sort of work with that, but then T2 kind of fucks it all up because first of all, they sent the robot to defend John, but they didn't send a robot to defend John in the first place. Like you would have thought they would send a robot both times, or if they could only it's weird, and there's a lot of just like, I don't know, that's just kind of how it worked.
Well, I think if you go off the basis that, you know, John has the knowledge that Kyle Reese is his father, and so he's obviously going to be the one that he picks to send back, and he knows that Kyle is going to die in the process of protecting Sarah so that he can then live.
Got to ensure that happens.
Yeah, so I think potentially, and if you sent an entire platoon back, it's like, oh, okay, well, they might potentially blow up the Terminator and win, and Kyle's not dead, so that's messing with the timeline then. So perhaps he knew that was just that was what he had to send, just that one guy, in order to make everything else happen, potentially.
I suppose that could be a rationalization, but then you might want to question, like, how did all of his men allow that? When they'll be like, John, shouldn't we send more? And he's just like, no, trust me.
Alright, so he's making several charges, namely that Snyder thinks he's being intelligent, but he's really not. If you listen to him on the EFAP with Loki, he judges it a 1 out of 10, and the way that Loki did its story, it destroyed the MCU and ruined about 23 movies. Well, just using simple logic, right, taking out Snyder, taking out Mauler, somebody told you, well, this fictional work ruined 20 other fictional works, and this other fictional work ruined 5 fictional works. Again, and you say, we're only going to go strictly by numbers. Which do you think is worse? Well, you'd say, the one that ruined 20 fictional works. But he still thinks the Snyder Cut is not intelligent. But apparently it was intelligent not to ruin all of the DCEU. So using his own standard, he's been caught red-handed, just lying, or just pure hypocrisy. And then we get into Terminator. He and Critical Drinker discuss the issue and just work through the, quote, contradictions of Terminator 1 and 2 and just posit a whole lot of, quote, solutions to the problems of, quote, all these logical contradictions and logical gaps by use of time travel. And they even admit, well, this isn't really in the film, but maybe we can say John Connor knows this, John Connor knows that, or maybe the rebellion had to do this, the rebellion had to do that. And you're really like dumbfounded because you're like, well, wait a minute. If this is true here for Terminator 1 and 2, which they admit is probably more problematic than the Predator, so they're not using logic or objectivity. They're admitting flatly, yeah, we have a preference for this. We don't care. So this is going to get preferential treatment.
Did not have. I know that people are absolutely loving the Snyder Cut right now, but I've never been one to go with the flow. So let's summarize. Apparently I care more about this universe than the cunts who write it. DCEU fans have the hardest fucking job. Imagine constantly pretending that your favorite movies have even a modicum of strong writing when stacked up against a franchise that is accidentally carrying its defective brother through having even just a few movies that aren't fucking balls.
You're a laboratory experiment. Everything special about you came out of a bottle.
Snyder is not a man that best functions when being able to go at his own pace. He needs restriction and someone to chop the fuck out of his movies to improve them. Even then, you end up with garbage. So how about we don't bother next time? Good luck to the future, you zombie franchise.
I don't know if you're gonna care about this either. It's not gonna change your life.
I've never been one to go with the flow. I don't follow the popular voice. I make my own judgments. So, is he the only critic of Zack Snyder online? As he made the only video essay hating the Snyder Cut. Really? So he's totally alone? He's not with the majority? I think at the very least there's a small minority of people who hate Zack Snyder. And they're not small people. These are very big YouTubers. They're YouTubers he clearly knows about. So he's just lying. And he says, I don't go with the flow. You were going with the flow in your conversation with Critical Drinker. You say, well, we have all these logical problems. He didn't say, I, Callum Edmonds, as representative of the objectivity, blah, 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 blah. The logic gods demand that I... No, he's like, these are problems, but I like Terminator. I like Terminator 2. Let's see how we can figure this one out. And their own judgments are like, based on our understanding of it, this is how it's going to work. And this is no longer a problem for us. Okay. Can anybody else do this? No, only the magical people on the EFAP and Critical Drinker can do that. Only the blessed ones can do this. Only they can be hypocrites and have a double standard. Only they can say Loki, because of its time travel issues, is 1 out of 10. Somehow Terminator 1 and 2 are just special. And what about the Snyder Cut? Well, it doesn't have major time travel issues. It does have some, let's be precise. Yes, the time travel was brought up in BVS, and time travel does come in at the end with the Flash. That's not what the central part of the story is about. Doesn't matter. It's still a bad film, even though it lacks these foundational problems. Clearly you're going with the flow. You're actually going with, quote, those who think it's popular to hate Snyder, and you're showing immense double standards with Terminator at 2 levels. You admit, well, if you have to be impartial, probably Predator has less problems. I don't care. I still prefer Terminator. Okay, so he's a liar and a hypocrite. And then within his conversation, he says, oh yeah, let's work through this. And then later in the Snyder Cut, he's like, no, I don't go with the flow. That's not me. I'm totally independent. I'll make my own decisions. I will not be swayed. Apparently, Critical Drinker's nice little soothing voice was enough to sway you. So yeah, another clown performance by Mauler. But I agree, Terminator 1 and 2 are great. Maybe we need to look beyond plot holes. Maybe we need to be reasonable when judging works of fiction. Maybe your objectivity, logical, blah 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 blah, EFAP mythology doesn't mean anything. It's just a joke to snare in the gullible and trick them into giving you money. Maybe that's what's really going on. But hey, I could be wrong.